don't kill, don't eat dead carcasses. And he came up with what today was known as the Ten Commandments. Originally it was a tridecalogue. There were 13. And it's been switched up by different religions throughout history and, started to mean other things. But it's so fascinating to go back into that era and to realize that a raw diet, RA, was to eat foods in the seasons that they grew in the region that you lived. And it was all based on water content. In the summers, in the warm periods, the water content can go up to 90-93%, like watermelon, cantaloupe, or rock melon, honeydews, things like that. And so they knew not to heat those foods. In other words, don't ever barbecue a watermelon. Just eat it raw in that season. And then as the weather got cooler, if you were in the northern areas, the water content goes down in the fall or autumn. Fall was the falling of the water content and the falling of the leaves in preparation for the cold season. And so the water content goes down in the apples and pears and other things start to come on. And as it gets colder and colder, the pumpkin and hard squash and beans and lentils and legumes. And they realized that you could heat those things in the cold season and not create a chaos in the body, because they believed that there was literally just one disease, and it was just a chaos at the level of atoms, or atomos, as they talked about 600 years BC in the classical period. And that created a molecular chaos that led to a cellular chaos that led to a symptom or a sign or a signal that there was a chaos in the body. And it was just so brilliant how they looked at things, and that there were only two things that could cause chaos or disease or discomfort, and that's toxicity as well as deficiency. No mysteries. They knew where health and life comes from, still does, and that if we would honor principles of life and health, then long life and vitality would be your life experience, and you would be disease-free. And that's what has thrilled me over my lifetime, is to watch and to see and to apply that myself. I've never been to a doctor in my lifetime. I don't get sick. I've never had the flu. I'll get the sniffles about every 6-7 years, and I just suck on some rock salt and sip some water that day, and it's gone the next day. And I've had friends and children. I have 11 children. They've never seen doctors. They've never been vaccinated. They choose to be vegetarian as well. They have their choice, and Dad, we want to do what you've done. It seems to make sense, and I just love that kind of thing.
That's wonderful, absolutely wonderful. In your discussion yesterday, you brought up the Egyptian term for atmos. What word was that again?
Oh, for atoms?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, for the description of the living entity, I think you...
Oh, yeah, I see. Yeah, they were trying to figure out, is there a particle that is not divisible? In today's physics, in the Fermi labs, and where they throw atoms around and
Hadron
smash
colliders.
them. Yeah, they're trying to find out, is there a particle that's not dividable,
Mm-hmm.
And they've never found one yet. But the ancient Egyptians did, and Democritus and others in that era did. And they called it the neter, NTR, in the Egyptian hieroglyphic presentation. Later, in spellings, they threw in the letter E, N-E-T-E-R, the neter. And they believed that that particle, which is at the level of a subatomic particle, is not dividable. And that's literally what led to the word in the English vernacular as individual. Individuals are not dividable. And they believed that that particle actually exists in the sun until an egg is fertilized, and then it's an 8-minute journey on beams of light at the right time to come in to the house or room of creation today called the womb. And it would enter into the developed fetus at that point. And it used to be called the quickening. And a mother could feel the quickening. All of a sudden she feels movement, which means that the nature of identity has entered the house, that the construction has taken place to the point it is ready for the individual to take up residence and to take over the finishing of the construction. It was a brilliant thing. They believe that when you die, that it's an 8-minute trip back to the sun, and that there are billions and trillions of neters that exist in conscious understandings within that light. That's why it was called Ra. That's why it was the Yam, that it was the place of residence, and that we are children of light. And it was so fascinating, and it is fascinating today, to go back and rethink these kinds of things. The word die means to create a replica. If I'm a die maker, I make a mold, and then I can make replications. They believe that because you come from seed you shall return. And that's why they say die. They died, meaning, yes, they went back, but there are other seeds in other people walking around on the earth, and that will be their return. So like in 1611, with the transliteration of the Judeo-Christian literature under King James, they wrote, "From dust you come, and to dust you shall return." Well, if you look in a 1600s dictionary up the word dust, it doesn't mean dirt.
Is it star?
It literally means smallest seed. Smallest seed. They believed that the egg and ovum were the smallest seed. And it is from that you came here, and it is from that you will return. Just the most fascinating stuff.
Stardust.
Yeah. Stardust. Yeah. Starseed.
I'm listening very intently to try and understand the knowledge you're speaking. Is that from a school of philosophy, or is that how you have developed from your reading, evolved your dialogue?
Yeah,
is there a special school, or is
yeah.
is it Don Tolman complete?
Oh. Well, you know, it's interesting because I actually spent 17 years, and at that time put on about 4 million air miles, and jumping on ships and riding on trains and all kinds of things, and went to different collections and tried to find a very specific meal that was considered to be sacred in the ancient world based on measures and signatures or signs of nature of those foods. And as I was going around, I kept reading things and seeing stuff that was blowing my mind. I'm like, well, why don't they teach this in school? How come you never hear about this stuff? And so finally, one of the things that I kept coming across, and it was actually, I don't know why, but at one time it was almost irritating. I kept coming across different cultures, all of them, that their wise ones would fast. They would do extended periods of fasting on water. And I kept coming across it again and again and again. And all of a sudden, one day I woke up and I go, why does that irritate me? And it was like, ooh, because I'm supposed to. Wow. So I got a couple of friends, went up at the top of Mount Lassen in Northern California. At the very top, the water runs right out of the top of the mountain into a stream, runs into the Sacramento River and goes out to the ocean. And on top of Mount Lassen, you can just look right across the valley and see Mount Shasta, which has quite a history behind it with the Lemurians and all kinds of other things there. And the clouds that form around it are just spectacular. But the Indians, the reason I chose that mountain I was living in California at the time. The Indian name for that mountain was Tahema, which meant God's water, or purest of waters. So I went up there and our friends dropped us off. We had tents, I had a glass jar, and that's all we were gonna be having for 40 days and 40 nights. And I did that. It was so interesting because for the first 3 days, I felt miserable. It was just miserable. And now I understand what you're going through in that 3 days metabolically, but on day 4, all of a sudden it just cleared and I was fine. Day 5, 6, my energy was coming up. Then I started walking and hiking and seeing the bears and the deer and stuff, and went on day 20. By day 20, I had so much physical energy, it was just absolutely unbelievable. I could not believe, how do you go 20 days on water and feel like getting up and running up the top of cliffs and jumping off into the lake? They had a pool up there, it's not a lake, it was just a small pool where the water pools down and then goes. And I was just wired. On day 30, for me, is when it began. All of a sudden, I could not record fast enough the thoughts and the downloads of memories and even scenes of future events that at the time I didn't know would be a future event. It just shocked me and surprised me what I was seeing. And so I'm writing all this stuff down, and I would sit there and I would just weep. The knowledge and the understandings, and it was like I was watching an audio video history of so much of the human experience and other things. And I knew I was not delusional. I wasn't having all of these trips, like people do who do not prepare themselves properly for ayahuasca or magic mushrooms or even, marijuana and other things. And in fact, that was part of that whole thing. I've never done any of those things, even to this day. But I realize I want to. But I want to do it the way the ancients did it. They would not agree with today that you eat white flour donuts and wash it down with soda pop and eat a bunch of crap and then go have marijuana. That to them would be the darkest, most dishonorable thing you could do to the intelligence that is contained in that plant, that activates your brain to the point it downloads the records and the intelligence of that plant into your conscious understandings. That is a shameful act. And so I realize here that in the near future, I want to experience that fasting experience. I've done it 3 times now. I've taken other people with me that wanted to. And every single time, there's these downloads of experience. But the real download comes on day 40, when the sun's highest in the sky, if you're going to honor what they did in the past. And you intuitively feel, what is the first bite of food that I want? And when you know what it is, and you get it, and you hold it with your hands, not a metal fork, you hold it with your hands, and you look at it, you smell it, and you take that first bite and completely insalivate it. And that experience goes through you. And from that moment, for the next 2 lunar periods, 28 days apiece, I don't think there's a moment that you're not downloading records and understandings. It is the most thrilling thing. And it saddens me that so much of humanity have lost the understanding of that. And again, the word fast means to make strong. It doesn't mean starve to death. It means to make strong. God, and I want so badly for more and more people to at least be exposed to these ideas. Whether they do it, it's them, it's up to them. But if more of us can become friends and form a community of people that are based upon just foundational, fundamental concepts and ideas that, as you really think about them, they're logical, they're reasonable, and we have an inherent, innate feeling that will resonate up within us. And these people can begin to form communities based upon this. And that's, I guess, my passion. But, so when you say, is this stuff you just read? A lot of it led me to the understanding of how to experience the records of the museum, the library that you are. You have 20 million kilometers of DNA, which is books of lives of your ancestors, of those yet unborn, and you can learn to see and hear the books and the records that you carry within your own house. I'm absolutely convinced that as a human being, you can never learn anything new. All you can do is become aware and conscious of what you already know.